Hey y'all, and welcome to PolitiBrawl. My name is Brian, and Representative Onder has some choice words for Dan Goldman that makes him rethink his entire political thought process. Let's dive in.
I might encourage you all to speak up against this Department of Justice charging with criminal charges one of your colleagues for doing her job, her constitutional mandated job. Now, I know many of you think you take an oath to Donald Trump, but in reality, the oath is to the Constitution. And you ought to be very, very careful about continuing to stay quiet as this president ravages and destroys our democracy and completely undermines and devastates your Article 1 power. So if you're going to find God and recognize that there's Article 1 power when it relates to administrative law, I hope you will also find Article 1 power to stand up to a rogue authoritarian administration rather than continuing to sit quietly as your own power is taken away and your own colleagues are being arrested for what is so obviously a politicized, trumped-up, bogus charge.
Mr. Hauser, thank you for your service to our country as a combat veteran. But no thank you to the Biden administration for precipitating the worst border crisis in American history. I would say that Joe Biden and his administration were incompetent, but I think it was intentional. It was intentional that he flooded at least 8 million illegal aliens into our country. And what is the Democrat solution? The Democrat solution seems to be, unless you've been convicted of a violent crime, you can stay. Not only can you stay, but we will pass amnesty bills to support you. We will block enforcement of immigration laws and endanger ICE officers with sanctuary city policies. We'll give you welfare. We'll give you health care. We'll give you free education. You know, if you want to come here as a birthright tourist, your kids will be citizens, and that will help you to stay in the country permanently. We'll give you free stays at luxury hotels. Oh yeah, Biden and his administration have really done a great job. Donald Trump has lowered illegal border crossings by 95%. Somehow that doesn't count. There are going to be surges later on, don't you know? Well, you know, this all gets away from the purpose of this hearing, which is the fact that activist protests, including those by members of Congress, obstruct immigration enforcement and undermine public safety. In April and May alone, there were more than 14 demonstrations planned across 12 states targeting ICE detention centers and related facilities. These types of demonstrations physically impede ICE detention center operations on purpose and inhibit the successful processing of detained illegal aliens. And you know what? I do care whether illegal aliens have committed violent crimes, of course, but I think every illegal immigrant, as you've pointed out, Mr. Michkowski, has broken the law and needs to leave. And to me, due process is you prove that they're not here legally, they get the hell out of our country.
The gentleman yield for a friendly question.
No, I do not. It's my time. You've spoken about 4 times so far in this hearing. How are ICE officials trained to react when a gate would be broken and stormed by a group of raucous protesters?
Sir, from what I saw in the video, I think they handled themselves the way they could, the best they could in that situation. I mean, what I saw was a lot of belly bumping from lawmakers, putting their hands on the officers, whether you agree or not agree. It's unlawful. Yeah. It shouldn't happen.
Well, there's assault and there's battery, and when you touch another person without their consent, that's battery. And battery of a law enforcement officer, is that a violation of the law?
Yes, sir.
Even if you're a member of Congress?
Yes, sir.
We members of Congress aren't above the law.
Absolutely, sir. And they were trying to protect maybe the facility. There was a lot of commotion there. Their number one concern at that moment is making sure nobody enters a secure environment and that could pose risk to a detainee or a congressperson or anybody else in that situation, sir.
Right, right.
There must be something in the water out in Missouri that keeps on causing them to send us their best and brightest out in D.C. And Bob Onder here says absolutely nothing wrong, and nothing more important than this: no one is above the law. Dan Goldman is out here carrying water for the Democrats who tried to illegally trespass on federal property. All right? Just remember, go back to one of the first days of 2021, and remember how much of a stink that has been raised and that they still raise today about that fateful day at the Capitol building. Well, now Democrats have been caught trying to enter ICE detention facilities, and one of the U.S. representatives, Miss McIver, decided to put her hands on a federal officer. Now, it wasn't terrible. It's not the worst thing I've ever seen. But, yeah, there's a reason that they're bringing up charges, and she will likely get charged. And I think it needs to happen. I think it needs to happen. The Republican Party needs to find their spine. And this is why I like Mike Johnson, but I don't respect Mike Johnson. The dude knows which side his bread is buttered. He knows how to keep some members of Congress in line, but he does not wield power in a way that makes a lot of people just completely respect the dude. Hey, y'all, here's the deal. Gold loves President Trump. Under Trump's first term, the price of gold soared 53%. And the price of silver jumped 51%. Since the start of the second term, gold has skyrocketed even higher, breaking records and even outperforming stocks. Here's what I like about precious metals like gold and silver. They have been used as a store of value for centuries. Governments can't easily manipulate it. They are used as hedges against market risk and, of course, against inflation. That's why I partnered with the amazing people over at Goldco. Goldco is an award-winning precious metals company. They are fans of this show, and they have helped millions of Americans just like y'all to purchase over $3 billion in gold and silver. Right now, you can get a free copy of their 2025 gold and silver kit. On top of that, you might also qualify for their amazing unlimited silver bonus offer. So don't wait on this. Go to PolitiBrawlGold.com to learn more. That's PolitiBrawlGold.com or call 855-644-GOLD. And when it comes to power dynamics here in the United States, we've actually had a huge problem with Congress. Congress is supposed to be where the laws originate, where the laws start. But what has happened for the past 30, arguably 40 years, is that the Congress has sort of just shut down. And one of the problems actually goes back to a court constitutional ruling by the Supreme Court where the line-item veto had been removed. That was sort of the last line of congressional defense that allowed Congress to actually work with each other and pass legislation. Once that got banned, all of a sudden, now there's only a handful of times where Congress will ever reach across the aisle and do something. We saw that with the CHIPS Act, by the way, one of the few good pieces of Democrat legislation in the past 30-some-odd years. So there is a power struggle, and so Dan Goldman is complaining about this power struggle. But in order to fix the problem, these congressmen, these men and women, need to find their spines again. Oh, and by the way, I went back and read up on the first article relating to the Congress, and here's something I found that was very interesting. The migration or importation of such persons as any of the states now existing shall think proper to admit shall not be prohibited by Congress prior to the year 1808, but a tax or duty may be imposed on such importation not exceeding $10 for each person. So there is actually, in other words, there's a law before the laws were written. It ingrained directly in the Constitution that says you cannot, that you can actually you can't fully shut down immigration. You shouldn't do that because the founders knew that America was going to grow. There was only one nation to the north of us. Mexico wasn't touching our borders at the time, but Canada certainly was. And the founders knew that we were going to expand. Well, we're not expanding much anymore. As a matter of fact, I do think this might actually cause a constitutional crisis. A real one, not the fake one that Dan Goldman's complaining about here. Because what he's been complaining about is Donald Trump effectively wielding the bully pulpit and actually using the powers given to the president by Congress, legally speaking, and Goldman's complaining about that. But this section is very interesting because it actually means that we can find the illegal immigrants that have come here. So I think that needs to be enforced. I think that would actually solve a lot of problems. You come into the United States, you are immediately fined. And you'd think that this is something that Congress would actually know how to deal with, but they don't. They don't anymore. And as much as I heap praise on places like Missouri for sending us Bob Onder, even congressional Republicans are a bit of a problem. We have something that I call squishy Republicans, people that don't really have the stomach for doing what is necessary to protect our borders, to keep Americans safe, and, of course, ensure that there aren't insane Democrats walking around, threatening federal agents, trespassing on property, and ultimately doing terrible things. Remember the Al Green story, where he wants to bring up articles of impeachment against President Trump? Well, he got up, spoke out of order, and Mike Johnson's job right then and there should have been to expel him right then and there from congressional grounds for breaking the laws that everyone there had agreed upon. Instead, the Democrats rallied around him, and Mike Johnson slunk away. I think that Republicans need to find their spine again. And again, Bob Onder's saying good things here, but there's something horrific, just for lack of a better phrase, going on with our political process. And it's not what's going on in the White House. It is definitely not President Trump. It has been the circumvention of traditional laws by the judicial system. We have seen things be abused, and we have these lawsuits left, right, and center, all coming against the Trump administration because they are trying to actually deal with the illegal immigration problem that is plaguing these United States. We have rogue activist judges, something that conservatives have been talking about for a long time. I remember my granddaddy looking me in the eye one day and saying, "Brian, the most important thing that Congress can do is to make sure that we don't let liberals take over the courts." Well, we've kind of let that happen. And I think it's time to start cleaning up some shop. And maybe Congress will finally start realizing that they actually have certain powers, and maybe Republicans can be leading the charge on that. But people like Dan Goldman will be making these wild claims and accusations saying that Trump is the problem. No, folks, he's not. As a matter of fact, he's part of the solution. And I regret to think what would happen if we didn't elect him in 2024. Folks, my name is Brian. Hope you enjoyed that segment here on PolitiBrawl. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch you on the next one. Until then, y'all have a good one.